Let's take a journey in our minds for a second. Close your eyes and think of Rome. What comes to mind? The colossal Colosseum, forums filled with marble statues, and the disciplined legions that made the world tremble. It feels like an unshakable power, something that would last forever. And then we picture the fall of Rome. Usually, we imagine barbarian hordes scaling the walls, setting the city ablaze with torches. The real collapse began much more silently, much more insidiously. Years before any of that, long before the enemy was at the gates, there was a cancer growing from within, eating away at the heart of Rome. And that cancer was something everyone carried in their pockets, something they used every single day: money. Let me tell you the incredible but true story of how an entire empire was brought down, not by the sword, but by the coin. Back when things were good, Rome had a superpower, the denarius. This small coin, minted from nearly pure silver, wasn't just a tool for shopping. It was a symbol of trust. A merchant in Egypt and a soldier on the British frontier both knew, without a doubt, what that coin was worth. It was the US dollar of its the world's reserve currency. The power of Rome and the value of its money were locked together. If one faltered, the other would fall. But running an empire that massive is like throwing money into a bottomless pit. The legions constantly needed to be paid, the roads and aqueducts needed repairs, and the endless wars drained the treasury. The emperors came to a crossroads. They could either impose heavy new taxes on the people and risk riots, or they could find a smarter way out. They chose the second option. Their plan was simple. If we don't have enough silver, we'll just reduce the amount of silver in each coin. We'll mix in a little copper, a little tin, and we can mint the same number of coins for a fraction of the cost. That way, we can pay more soldiers and fund more projects. On paper, it sounded brilliant, right? It was like a slow-acting poison. In the beginning, under Emperor Augustus, a denarius was about 95% pure silver. You could feel its weight. Hear the solid, satisfying clink of a precious metal. A century later, that ratio had dropped to around 80%. Then another emperor came along and thought, who would notice if we mixed in a little more? And the ratio fell to 60%. By the time the 3rd century rolled around, things were out of control. The silver content, which had dropped to 50% under Caracalla, fell to less than 5% under Get. What was left wasn't a silver coin anymore. It was a bronze slug washed with a paper-thin layer of silver. And don't think for a second that the people didn't notice. Of course they did. The coin didn't sound the same when you dropped it on a market stall. It felt lighter in your hand. Its color was off. People would bite coins to see if they were real well. During this time, everyone became an expert. Trust, along with the silver content, was slowly and surely eroding. And what happens when trust erodes? A monster called inflation wakes up. A basket of olives you bought for 1 denarius yesterday suddenly cost 5 the next week. A month later, it was 20. Prices were skyrocketing because nobody trusted the money anymore. A merchant selling his goods knew that the coins he received today would be worth less tomorrow. This destroyed the lives of ordinary people. A craftsman who had saved money his entire life saw his savings turn to dust. The salary of a legionary risking his life on the frontier was no longer enough to feed his family. This is why soldiers started to constantly revolt, threatening emperors for more pay. Trade ground to a halt. Why would a cloth merchant from Syria accept a bag of questionable coins from Rome? He started demanding, "Give me gold," or "Let's trade my cloth for your grain." People abandoned one of the most fundamental inventions of civilization, money, and went back to the ancient system of barter. When you're trading a chicken for a sack of flour with your neighbor, you know things are not going well. This economic chaos triggered political chaos. The 50-year period known as the Crisis of the 3rd Century was absolute mayhem for Rome. Sometimes, 3 or 4 emperors would rule in a single year, most of them murdered by their own soldiers, who they could no longer afford to pay. Each new emperor, desperate to hold on to power, would mint even more worthless coins, thinking he could solve the problem, but in reality, he was only sinking deeper into the quicksand. In a final, desperate act, Emperor Diocletian took the stage. "I must put a stop to this," he declared, and issued the most comprehensive price control law in history, the Edict on Maximum Prices. He set a price ceiling on everything: meat, grain, shoes, even the fee for a haircut. The punishment for charging more? Death. Sounds tough and decisive, doesn't it? But the result was a complete disaster. You cannot make a worthless coin valuable by law. Producers, seeing that they would lose money by selling at the official prices, simply pulled their goods from the market. Everything moved to the black market, where prices were even higher than before. Diocletian's well-intentioned but naive edict dealt the final blow to official trade. Eventually, the denarius was abandoned completely. The empire tried to stabilize things with new gold coins, but for the Western Roman Empire, it was too late. The foundations of the economy had been dynamite. The armies couldn't be sustained, the trade routes were broken, and the cities shrank as people fled to the countryside. Trust was gone. When the barbarians finally arrived at the gates, they didn't find the glorious Rome of old. They found the skeleton of a tired giant, hollowed out economically and broken socially. All they had to do was push it over. So, is this just a fairy tale that happened 1,700 years ago? I wish it were. This exact story has been repeated time and time again, just with different names and different currencies. Think of Germany after World War I to pay off its war debts. The government printed marks non-stop. The result? The most terrifying hyperinflation in history. People had to take their wages home in wheelbarrows. A loaf of bread cost billions of marks. Savings, dreams, hopes, all were crushed under piles of worthless paper. Or, look at Zimbabwe in the 2000s. Their government opened the money printing taps all the way. Inflation reached a level so insane that scientists calculated it at 89.7 sextillion%. They eventually had to abandon their own currency entirely. Now, let's bring it to today. To us, in 1971, something crucial happened. The US dollar's last link to gold was severed. Since that day, almost all currencies in the world are fiat currencies backed by nothing tangible, only by the promise of governments. And governments, just like the Roman emperors, have always been tempted to turn on that money printing tap in tough times. The result? We might not be carrying our paychecks in wheelbarrows, but we all feel our money's purchasing power slowly eroding. The salaries that could support an entire family for our grandparents seem comically small to us now. It's the same game as in Rome, just being played in slow motion. So here is the real lesson Rome whispers to us across the centuries. Inflation isn't an accident or a natural disaster. It's a policy. It is the oldest trick in the book for rulers to silently transfer wealth from the people to the state. This is why it's so important to understand that real wealth isn't found in the zeros in your bank account or the paper in your wallet. Real wealth is in the things that hold value even when currency fails. A skill you've mastered, a piece of land you own, a productive business, in short, the things that are real even when money becomes an illusion. The story of Rome is the ultimate proof of how fragile money can be, and how, when it breaks, civilization itself can begin to crack. History is always teaching us its lessons. We just have to be smart enough to listen.